What's up, everybody? It's the Outlaw John Rocha here with my spoiler review for episode 8 of Andor. This one absolutely knocked me on my ass. It worked on so many levels when we're following the journey of Andor here as he goes into the prison, what's going on with Cyril, and how he's advancing forward here, getting into Deidre's eye line, getting into her eyesight and her purview there, possibly closer to working for the Empire again. Deidre's reaction to all of this now that she has the full backing of the ISB, even as she's pitching still to get more equipment, more soldiers, more local people on the ground to help her as she pursues now Cassian Andor. She's aware of this name now, and she wants to have more access to what happened there on Ferrix. And then we go to Ferrix as well and see what's going on Ferrix. And poor Marva is getting older, and how Bix is taking care of her, and of course how she ends up causing trouble for homie who works the hotel, and what ends up happening with him. And we see that last shot of her being essentially thrown into the chair, of her story thrown into the chair for this episode, and slapped, I think, before they go and close the door on her. So much here to explore as the Empire is getting closer to Cassian, even though they are unaware that they actually have him in essentially a prison or a penal colony there. And the name of the episode here is Narkina 5, which is where he's sent to. It's directed by Toby Haynes, who's done a number of fantastic episodes in British television, Doctor Who, Sherlock. I think there's one more here that I'm a big fan. Jonathan Strange and Mr. Norrell. He did a fantastic job with that series as well. And I think he did an incredible job directing this particular episode. A lot of shades of 80s sci-fi, with not only just the music cues, which had the synthesizer vibe to it, but the clean white prison, everybody in essence wearing the same outfit, the dehumanization there, the way you're controlled, the way you're made to work on these pieces of equipment that are probably going to be used by the Empire to keeping people in line, to taking over planets, to subjugating a species or subjugating people on those planets. The irony of all of that Andor is now working in the prison to help that happen. But let's not get ahead of myself. Let's just start with that from the beginning. The journey of Andor here, him being lined up. Don't let it be lost on you that it's a bunch of people of color, referencing what we've seen now in our world, being aware of how many people of color are disproportionately sent to prison, being lined up, sent to the different colonies that they're sent to. When they arrive, almost the entire security force is white. Don't let that be lost on you either. And then he's sent to go work down in the prison. And look, that was awesome to see Andy Serkis. I absolutely let out a big squeal of joy that Andy Serkis was down there, but he is in charge of the prisoners. So, you can make that connection, the idea of a imprisoned person being put in charge of the prisoners, so the Empire doesn't have to get down into the micro managing of the situation. And certainly if you studied your history, subjugated peoples, there are always those dictators or people who colonize areas who make a member of that crew become the head of that crew and put forth their policies or their tactics to try to keep that crew working or doing whatever they need them to do. So study your history. It's all there for sure. And so it's great to see Andy Serkis being a part of this. It was such a joy, but like seeing him tell Andor what is expected of him, what the situation is, and you would not be out of the realm of connection to see that prison area is very similar to the metaphorical prison that Cyril is in those cubicles, being that fuel counter that he is. And we'll get to Cyril's story in just a second, but seeing the progression of Andor in this situation, we see him watching how everyone is working. We hear that Andy Serkis's character, God, I can't remember the name right now, but Andy Serkis's character, Kino Loy, is making them work as a competition. Like he's made it a competition for himself. So he's pushing the guys there to work faster and work harder so that he can keep this status where he's at. Again, this idea of putting someone who is a member of the crew in charge of the crew and then turning it into something that is a competition rather than realizing that he is being in service to the same dictator that put him in that prison. It's a colossal mindfuck that's going on here that I think is genius as we're working through the prison here. We're seeing Andor kind of see everything's happening. In essence, we are Andor. We're watching him survey everything that's happening and take it all in as we're taking it all in for the first time. He meets his crew that is going to be on table 5. Then when they get to the prison area where their cells and stuff, he gets schooled on what the cell has and how he's going to get his food and to be aware of the red lights. And then we cut to 30 shifts later, and he's now a little more confident. He's working, doing these things with the crew. He's not talking too much, but he's working with the crew. They want to know later on about him, if he knows about the new regulations that the Empire has implemented, which, of course, he was one of the first people to be imprisoned under the new regulations. But he says he doesn't know anything about it. And I'm not sure if he does or he doesn't, but it certainly seems like he's incredibly depressed about the whole situation. So we see that shot of him alone in his cell in the dark. But yeah, and then later we see him like now fully in working with the guys, not barking out orders, but calling out orders and being aware of things and looking at the older dude who's slowing them down a little bit in certain moments. So he's being mentally indoctrinated into this life already. And the irony is that here is what is going to be one of the greatest rebels in the Alliance here at this stage in his life, when he's been thrown into prison. He claims he's innocent, and he is of the charges he was charged with, but not innocent of the crime in Aldhani. And we see him kind of processing what's happening and then dialing in and diving in, and in essence, just becoming a part of this. And this is what prison does. This is what dictators and people who are in control of countries want to do once they're in control of it. They want to turn the populace into mindless, dehumanized zombies who are constantly afraid, and make them just keep working. So they never focus on the fact that they're stuck in a prison. They never focus on the fact of they don't have the time to start a rebellion, to get people together, to go against the people who are in charge of them. So it's just this kind of dehumanization here, in essence, a mental blanking there that they're doing by having them do these kinds of things that are constantly busy work all day. Very similar to what they used to see in the chain gang here in our country, what you used to see in other regimes. If you've studied other regimes, you've seen what they've done to people. So just very similar to what we get in our prisons even nowadays. So it's just like so powerfully brought about here in what Andor is experiencing. And we see one of the cellmates, and it really brings it home. One of the cellmates steps out in the red lights and essentially kills himself. And the reaction is not, oh my God, he's dead. We've lost a friend. We've lost a cellmate. We've lost a compatriot. No, it's like, oh my God, this is going to slow us down. This is going to mess us up, mess our day up. What was he thinking? Now everybody's awake. So the dehumanization is there so mentally that a human being's death is treated as something that's an inconvenience to their overall productivity in their own lives. And that's what they do in a lot of prisons. That's what they do when they subjugate people, is they make it so that people who are subjugated eventually start to see things the way the Empire sees them, or the way the dictators see these people, as just numbers, and they're not human. So it's an incredibly powerful job here by the writers and by director Toby Haynes to bring that across. Going over to Cyril now. Cyril, great stuff here with Cyril. We're seeing, as I said, his slow movement towards the Empire. The interrogation with him and Deidre was fantastic. If you notice, after he gets the report, after he reads it, because Deidre wants to know what he knows, which we predicted on the Geek Buddies review last week that was going to happen. Him talking about him saying he hadn't seen the report, then he does. He says there's a bunch of stuff missing, gives more information to Deidre, and Deidre is called back into the room after she dismisses him. He calls her back into the room twice. And I think the second time, when he's trying to say, like, I could be a tool, I could be of service, she says to him, stop putting these fake accusations on Cassian Andor where you're at, because if you do it again, it's not going to be me that's talking to you. So essentially that's a threat that if he keeps this up, he's going to face some pretty harsh circumstances. And we follow Deidre out, who is pitching to the ISB what she wants to see done. I love what we've got here. Her wanting to take more control of the situation, her wanting to do what needs to be done here. She has this impulse, and it's very similar to Cyril's, right? They're both rebels within the Empire in their own way, not against the Empire, but certainly rebels in the way that they're trying to push for the Empire to be more strict. They're trying to push for the Empire to go after Cassian Andor. So we see how Cyril does that in the cell with Deidre, and then Deidre does the same thing with the guy who's above Partagaz there in the ISB, when he's kind of like, well, this is a lot of equipment, this is a lot of manpower that you need, it seems like a lot of money. And she mouths off a little bit in that moment and says, well, it's a fraction of what it costs to lose this technology, and then catches herself, and Partagaz kind of saves her. And we see that she's eventually sent down to Ferrix, and we'll get to that in just a second. But yeah, we see all of this come about. And then Mon Mothma, and Mon Mothma's situation is so fascinating too, right? We get a little bit more about the marriage, how they met at 15, how she became a senator at 16. Tay Como shows up, so they have a little more of a conversation. The daughter is a little interesting to me. She always shows up when Tay's around inside, and she was really nervous and weird in some ways. So there's something more with that daughter. I think she's turning her mother in, as we see in communist countries, as we see in countries that have that kind of dictatorial rule, this idea of even companies. Hell, when I was working for a certain company, the boss of that company told me to watch over people who were working at that company, to report if I saw any of them being lazy or not doing their job or not writing their articles. I was told to do that. So it was crazy how certain bosses in certain situations, how certain dictators in certain situations kind of can be on top of people because they just want to rule by suspicion, rule by fear, right? So you see that here. And I wonder if the daughter there, Lita, is going to kind of turn in her mom for something that she might be doing. And of course, Perrin is getting a little more suspicious as well about the whole situation, especially when Tay supposedly leaves early. What does that mean? Do you think Perrin turned Tay in? Because Mon Mothma was surprised that Coma would leave so early. So there's stuff there to explore. So we'll see more of that. And then we have that moment, as I tweeted out, we have that moment with her talking to the senators about how Palpatine is doing things. And I mean, it's so similar to what we hear. We have that one senator saying, yes, he's a bit overreactive. Yes, he can be defensive. He's a bit much, but he says what he means. I love that. You hear that from a lot of Trump supporters. He says what he means, right? And you have Mon Mothma call the senator out. What does that mean? And we're hearing about the removal of people's rights, that they can go in at any time and investigate people and use the military. And two of the senators, one of the senators with Mon Mothma, pushes back, but the other female senator, along with the male senator, no, well, if you have nothing to fear, and it shouldn't be an issue. Where have we heard that before, ladies and gentlemen? So the show is very clearly taking a side, and I think it's genius in the subtle way that it's doing it. It's kind of brilliant how it's putting it out on the table there for you all to catch if you want to catch it. It works just as a regular surface thing, but there's more meaning going on here if you want to find it for sure. So certainly the Mon Mothma stuff is interesting in how it's progressing, and the Luthen stuff is very interesting too. If we go back to Ferrix, I mean, it's breaking my heart to see Marva so she seems like she's aged overnight 10 years. She's moving slower. She's she's trying to help. We find out that she was looking for this tunnel into the hotel to go ahead and maybe clear it for the rebels to come through if they were to come through on Ferrix and attack the Empire. So a rebel at heart from beginning to end. Certainly Marva. And it'd be fascinating to see a Marva miniseries down the road as a spinoff with a younger version of Fiona Shaw as Marva. That could be really, really interesting. But we see Bix there trying to take care of her, trying to make sure she's okay. We hear about her falling down on her knee. We hear about her breathing is an issue. All these things that are happening. We also see Brasso, who comes in, and Brasso is helping Bix, and they have a conversation afterwards. But who's watching them? Vel and Cinta. I love the moving pieces. We never forget we never forget all the storylines that are happening. They always touch in, and we see within those storylines the progression of those storylines as they're intersecting with other storylines. Genius writing here, man. Vel and Cinta talking about, it's in essence Cinta saying, I want to stay here. I want to do what needs to be done. We need to separate. Vel, who we have seen throughout the Aldhani trilogy, shall we call it that, those trilogy of episodes, she very much is much more dialed into this relationship than Cinta is. And she's hurt that Vel's hurt that Cinta would want to separate again. But Cinta says, look, I told you from the beginning, we are in this rebellion, and the rebellion comes first. And then Cinta even takes a little bit of a shot at Vel when Vel is asking her about who she's going to pretend to be. And she says, maybe I pretend to be a rich girl running away from her family, which Vel takes it hard and says it's a bit low, which implies that is Vel's story. So there's more here with Vel that we're going to find out. I no longer think that she's Luthen's daughter. I think it's now, because why would she run away if she's working for her dad? So it's to be a rebel. So it doesn't make sense. So there's more to her story. And I wonder if she's connected to a member of the Empire. I don't want to see Daisy Ridley being a clone of Palpatine or connected to Palpatine anyway. So whatever, as long as they can avoid that, I'm cool with her being connected with a member of the Empire. But I'm very curious to see more. And then we see Bix, of course, going over there and talking to Pac and trying to get to the hotel so she can communicate to Luthen and let Luthen know what's going on with Cassian, because she's so worried about Marva. She thinks Cassian's showing back up, or that Cassian should actually be here to help take care of his mother. They don't know he's in prison. They don't know where he is. So they're trying to find him. And certainly Vel and Cinta are there trying to find Cassian because, of course, they've been told by Clea that they need to kill Cassian in essence. So you see that all happening as again, great intersecting storylines, all of them all over the place. And then it leads to Dedra now intersecting as we see her walking on Ferrix, as we see her taking control of Ferrix. She clearly has the manpower and the equipment that she needed. And we got to the next morning, and after Bix has sent through the communications to Luthen, but Luthen has not responded. And Clea tells him we got to shut this thing down, and that he's slipping. He says he's not slipping, and then eventually realizes we need to shut this thing down, and does, right? So Bix gets no answer, and the result is the next morning they track this communication down to Pac, and they take him in and they beat him. And listen, this idea, for those of us who are Latinos, those of us who study our history, we know about these regimes that have come into a lot of our countries, and they've taken the fathers or the husbands. I mean, They Dance Alone, that song from Sting, is a reference to that, of what happened to Chile under Pinochet. Do your history, research that. You'll find out about how they took fathers and sons and brothers and all, and wiped them out in mass. And all these women danced alone. All these, the reference of women dancing alone because their husbands have been taken from their. So the idea that oh God, I forget his name again. Brasso. The idea of Brasso telling Bix that Pac was taken last night, and they haven't seen him ever. Taken to the hotel, they haven't seen him since. This idea of the killing of a father, or the taking away of a father from, and we see the son reacting there very strongly against some of the rebel soldiers. Then they call out Bix, and Bix runs, right? But they eventually catch her. They bring her in. Dedra plays like, the soldier asks, should I take Pac out of there? And Dedra says, no, I want her to see Pac. And so Bix comes in, sees Pac there, and Dedra acts as if she would. What are you doing? Get him out of there! And the soldier's like, "What the fuck? Yeah, let's get him out." But it's all for effect. And this is what they do: the mind fucking of what they do. These people in power to subjugate people, to remove their humanity, to keep them underfoot, to scare them with torture. All these things that they do. It's the ugliest sides of human beings that are being seen in this show. And I think it's just such genius, such guts the show has to take Star Wars to a completely new level. And this is really becoming my favorite thing of Star Wars ever. I'm not even joking. Like, it is rivaling Empire Strikes Back. It is that damn good, the storytelling. And as if this episode didn't have enough great stuff in it, now we go to Luthen going to confront Saw Gerrera here, talking to him about, who's this guy? Anto Krieger, who he said he's found a weakness in the defenses of the Imperial power station at Spellhouse. He says he's got things to sell Saw, and Saw can have them for free if he just meets with Anto, or the price is just meeting with Anto Krieger. Saw doesn't want to meet with him. They go back and forth on this issue. Saw then talks about the separatists and Maya Pei being a neo-Republican, the Gorman Front, human cultists, galaxy partitionists. He says they're all lost, that he is the only person who has clarity of purpose. Luthen calls him out and says, yeah, it's real fun to have clarity of purpose when you're in caves and want anarchy. That's a luxury you have sitting here in caves. And then Saw comes back at him and says, well, Saw says to him, like, who are you? Who are you really? And Luthen answers with some mumbo jumbo about being a coward. So we see them go back and forth about their different approaches to the rebellion. I'm more on Saw's side of things, which is probably no surprise to most of you. I'm on Saw's side of things. I don't like Luthen, and I'm starting to dislike him more and more. Him and Clea, because they want to kill Cassian, and I don't want that. So Saw says no sale eventually, and that's that. So, and then with the last shot is, once again, we cut back to Andor at the prison. He is fully rhythm and now as he's calling orders. But here the irony is that he is building weapons for the people that he was against, or the people that imprisoned him, right? As I said, this entire storyline for Andor in this episode is a colossal mindfuck of dehumanization. And I think this was one of the most fantastic episodes of the season. It worked on a psychological level. It worked on a chilling level. It worked on a human level. There's so much here that was going on. And this is only after a first watch. I mean, after I see it a couple more times, I'm certainly going to find a bit more to drill into, like they want to drill down into Ferrix and find the rebellion there. I'm going to drill down into this episode and find so much more to talk about when we do our Geek Buddies review. So listen, this is my spoiler review. Just wanted to talk about this stuff, some of the symbolism here, some of the things that I was catching on a first watch. But overall, this is a fantastic series that continues to get better and better every episode. This episode is no different. I hope you all enjoyed it. Not going to talk Easter eggs or anything. I'll save all that for the Geek Buddy stuff. For me, just watching it for the first time, making the notes that I made, seeing the progression of these storylines and the progression of these relationships was an actual joy, an absolute joy to watch in this episode. The acting, the writing, the directing, the cinematography, the score. Jesus, the 80s synth score, sci-fi synth score was so fun to witness in this show. So just overall great stuff. Well, let me know what you thought about it down in the comments section below. Is this show growing on you, or is this show like, are you at the same level as I am, that you look forward to this show every week to see how much more you're going to enjoy in the world that they're fleshing out here in Andor? Let me know down there in the comments section below. If I missed anything, let me know as well. I think I got the basic general gist of everything that was going on, but if I missed anything, let me know down there. I'll make sure to bring it up on the Geek Buddies review when we do our spoiler review with Laura Kelly this week. Hit a like on this video, share it on your social media, put that hashtag the Outlaw Nation so people come and hang out with me on the Outlaw Nation. And speaking of the Outlaw Nation, make sure you subscribe to the channel down below. Hit that subscribe button, hit that bell button, so you see when we're dropping all the content we do here on the Outlaw Nation channel. Head on over to Twitch, follow me there, the Outlaw Nation, all one word, and the Patreon, please, patreon.com/John Rocha. All right, y'all take care of yourselves. Be well, and I'll talk to you next time with another brand new spoiler review episode here from the Outlaw Nation. Watch Andor. It's so damn good.